Hello, my name's Deborah Basckin. I'm a producer at NBC Left Field. And once this shows up, I don't know if it's going to happen. I'll be talking about a project I'm working on with a colleague of mine called Owen Rich. And the two of us have been working in the realm of VR, AR, and MR, and all the Rs, as we were saying. Is that going to... Okay. Super exciting. What's next? Yeah, okay. So this is us. Those are our Twitter handles. And what I'll do today is I thought I'd start off by talking a little bit about the project we're doing. I'm not going to assume everyone's seen what we're up to. And then talk a bit about what we were thinking when we did it, what we've been thinking since, and where that might go in the future. So hopefully that leads into the what's next kind of question. So as I said before I start explaining anything, I thought I'd show a few clips from some of the episodes we've been making. So they're all short features. They're about between 2 and 3 minutes long. And here is a little bunch of clips.
And contrary to popular belief, it's not the words love, sex, secret, or God that are getting us into trouble. This other spike is in the 60s when all the baby boomers, the kids born from these weddings, actually came of age and started to marry each other. There are 127,000 hours of sports to watch. At the end of the day, for every 100 people who make them, ultimately, only 9% of people are going to keep them. There are a lot of factors which feed into sports improvement, whether it's increased fitness or advances in medicine or doping. Overwhelmingly, love is the main reason people get married.
So that's some of what we... Oh, thanks. So that's some of what we've been working on. I think the most mixed part of that reality was me talking about sports. What you can see is it's animated, it's fun. We're using data, it kind of lends itself to data visualization and to sort of speaking to...
And contrary to popular belief, it's not the words love, sex, secret, or...
Right. And so as we were kind of working through how this whole process was going to work and how we were going to think about it, I keep coming back to the fact that it's a bit like the sort of bizarre love child of Hans Rosling and Picasso's light paintings. And so that's what we're keeping in our minds as we go along, the fun that we can have with it. So mixed reality. Okay, there's lots of blurry lines between all the kinds of realities. But mixed reality, often when we hear it, we think of something like this. And it's huge and it's really interesting. People are kind of sort of displaying their live gameplay. So in an image like this, you've got about 80% is the virtual world and about 20% is the real person world. And we've decided to kind of flip that on its head. And so that's what you've seen in our clips. This is how we do it. I could spend 4 hours on this, and Owen could spend maybe 3 to 4 years talking about the rig that we built and the way that it's running. But I will kind of summarize and say this is our setup, and what we're doing is we're taking the virtual reality, the drawing, the drawings that I'm doing, and live compositing at the same time with the real reality that we're filming. So what's being spat out at the end is actually a finished product. It takes virtually no post-production. We're not using any graphics or anything else. And here's a shot of Owen as he's filming me. We're using a glide cam as part of our rig. And you can see behind him is a monitor, which is showing both the drawings as well as the real world that we're filming at the same time. So how we came to think of it. So we were talking about VR a lot, and Owen and I come from an innovation background as well, but we've also always primarily been program makers. So we were quite keen to make something that we could use immediately, sort of that instant gratification of being able to be producers and to be journalists. And he'd worked previously, and I'd been near it, on a piece for virtual reality as a platform. So he made a piece called Trafficked. It's excellent. I advise everyone to go check it out. But this is very much creating a piece for VR as a platform. So this involved using a game engine, modeling, graphics, a bunch of other people, and huge sort of production line. I mean, it was a small team, but it takes a long time to make. And we flipped that again, and we are now using, instead of making something for VR as a platform, we're using VR as a tool. So what we're using is Google Tilt Brush, which is a totally commercially available product that anybody can have if they've got the setup. And we're bending it, and there's a lot of bending, we're bending it to our use to tell stories. ultimately, we just like to connect with audiences in new and innovative ways. So the moment this presented itself as something we could do after lots of tinkering and trying and innovating, this is what we've come to. So again, it's just distinguishing massively between making something for VR, which will be seen by people with VR headsets, and using VR as a tool to actually essentially make quite a traditional piece of broadcast, which is video, which is where we come from. This is where we took it outside, and I left my soul on that shoot. And so to talk about what we found as we've been going along, the process itself is quick and nimble, and we believe that the result is direct, authentic, and hopefully a bit disruptive. So to explain a little bit about what I mean by each of those, so we're working on a schedule of about 5 to 7 working days between having an idea, scripting it up like this, shot listing, well, research, writing, shot listing, filming, editing, grading, putting the sound in, and delivering within 5 to 7 working days. Which, when you think of, some video, that's either very long or very short, depending on the quality and what you're trying to achieve. And of course, I think like goldfish in a tank, they tend to grow and shrink to the time that you're given. But we think that's pretty cool for 2.5 to 3 minutes. So we're going from something like this, the script, some images, some ideas, to something like this, what we're making, what we're drawing, and trying to do it within 5 to 7 working days. When I talk about being nimble, I was going to say agile, and then I realized that was going to send everyone frantic. So it's not agile, nimble. This is the team. That's me and Owen working hard. And I have huge respect for news graphics, for data teams, and all of those things. But this is another way of making a product that is that avoids kind of workflows and snarl-ups that you might have. So if you're left with 2 people in a room, this is the kind of thing that you can create. So that's what we mean by a bit nimble. When we're talking about direct, and it's really bizarre to be that tall, when we're talking about direct, because of what we've shot and the way that we're doing it, there is a seamless integration between the presenter and what they're presenting. So there's nothing too artificial. I'm definitely talking to those graphics, to those things that I've drawn. And I think that comes across as quite engaging for an audience. Which leads me into the next thing, which is this buzzword of authenticity. Everybody wants something authentic, and bizarrely, in this way, you kind of get it. No matter who the presenter is, they are the art director. This is my terrible handwriting, and these are my drawings. And thinking about how this might sort of expand outwards, whoever presents is going to put their authentic stamp on it and speak to their own work. So there is that immediacy, which obviously does very well on sort of social platforms and online, but is also just engaging, I think, for a lot of audiences in general. And when we talk about being disruptive, this is just a screen grab. We come from a broadcast media background, so we know that people are quite blasé about the tropes of news, and news video in particular. So anything you can do to kind of wake people up and sort of shake them a little and get information in a new way, we think is quite, hopefully quite attention-grabbing. And strays from being a gimmick. We're very committed to the actual journalism of getting a message across and being able to explain things in new ways. So a lot of what I keep saying, and somebody actually mentioned it earlier, is we think this lends itself to a kind of back-of-the-napkin explainer. That moment when you're in the pub or bar, and your friend wants to explain something and is getting frustrated and eventually takes a napkin out and draws it with a pen. That's kind of where we're sitting and where we hope a lot of people will start to engage with us. So, thinking about the future, of course, I've mentioned news graphics before, and I love news graphics teams, and they do amazing stuff. But we can also think about how this might be used in a news sort of storytelling way, perhaps even for live television. We have used it in a live setting. Of course, it lends itself to explainers. That's what we were talking about, back of the napkin. And we've been approached by people from the worlds of science and education who see huge scope for its use there. And of course, politics. We were talking about speed and getting to have that information quick. This is it takes a huge amount of work to get up and running and to work out how to do it, and I'd be happy to go into that. But it's ultimately something that can be quite quick to create and quite quick to broadcast, so that works for the immediacy. And then future thinking for the workflow, it does speed it up if you're a team of 2. Again, that depends on what you would like to create. But for the skills you need, this is quite interesting. I have absolutely no artistic capabilities whatsoever, but the tool itself is really fun to pick up and play with. And the moment you start having fun and the moment you start bending your mind to what it can and can't do, the sky's the limit. And thinking about how it might be used actually sort of from a sort of creation side, there is at the moment, if you walk into a newsroom or to a 3D sort of graphics department, there'll be people sort of moving 3D models around on a 2D screen. Whereas actually using the Google Tilt Brush or using a headset like this might allow you to draw and create these things in 3 dimensions. So you might walk into a newsroom and see a bunch of people standing in rows kind of moving around like this and creating assets for future use. So essentially, just to wrap it all up, we've been working this out. We've spent a lot of time figuring out what it can and it can't do. But the key takeaways, I think, are using VR as a tool as opposed to making something for VR as a platform. And the sky's the limit. We've taken a consumer tool, a consumer product, and made it work for us, but still with a commitment to journalism and explaining things. Thank you.